Well, let's go to, I think, one of the most interesting hotspots. Ottawa has most of the attention. It's the capital city. It has the most trucks. It's the closest to the heart of darkness in the Liberal Party. The Ambassador Bridge between Detroit and Windsor is enormous. A quarter of Canadian trade goes on that bridge. To shut that down is going to get the attention of Ontario Manufacturers, PDQ. But I think one of the most important and interesting convoys is the one in Coutts, Alberta. That's at the border between Alberta and Montana. And it has such enormous local support from the farmers, from the townspeople, that Coutts is in a total lockdown by the truckers, but RCMP have made a large siege wall around Coutts so to stop others from going to it, to aid it, to help it. And at the siege wall in Milk River, another enormous, even larger rally has gathered. And I say rally, it looks like, as they say about the Stampede, the greatest outdoor show on earth. There's cowboys, there's bonfires, there's barbecues. It's a festive atmosphere. This is not a group of criminals. And the police have no chance unless they're going to go full police state. When you have lost the consent of the people, you cannot effectively police. What are you going to do when you have thousands of ordinary law-abiding citizens, including women and children? What can you do? Well, I'm recording this before 3 o'clock Eastern time. Jason Kenney, the Premier, is scheduled to have a press conference at 7 p.m. Eastern time, where he's expected to make some modest loosening of his restrictions, but he's not going to go the full Premier Moe. As you know, Premier Moe in Saskatchewan today announced the end of the restrictions. Jason Kenney is resisting. So I tell you that because that will happen after the video we are recording now goes to air. But I want to go straight to one of our two guys on the ground in Coutts, Sydney Fizzard, who along with Kian Simone has brought you exclusive, world exclusive coverage. He joins us now via Skype. Sydney, first of all, congratulations. You and Kian have done work that has been viewed around the world. I don't know if you know that. I think you can probably detect it on social media, but the work that you and Kian have done has been broadcast to literally millions of people around the world. Congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And it's good to be here, especially because we just want to tell the story like it is. And that's not something that you see too often on the mainstream media, as we call it.
Well, and that's the thing. Your videos tell the truth, and it's amazing to me the exclusive access you have had to the men who have formed a sort of democratic council on things. I mean, obviously there are certain things that you can't show because they're, the truckers want privacy for certain negotiations, et cetera. But you really are, as they say, a fly on the wall, watching history being made. And I think that's because you've earned the trust of all parties involved. You just tell the truth. You tell the other side of the stories. Now, the cops don't like that because they want to do their moves in darkness, but no one can say that you and Kian have not told the honest truth about what's going on at Coutts.
No, that's absolutely right. And authorities as well, they've been a little shy as well, but they have been quite cordial with us, and they have been letting media through as well. That includes us. Where normally you would see us get stopped at the gate, so to speak. Oh, Rebel News, we don't know who Rebel News is, this and that. They've actually recognized us, and they've been like, yep, go on straight through the border, or the barriers, I should say, that the police have set up. So they're not restricting us like they have in other scenarios.
Yeah, I think they know that if they held Rebel News reporters back, that would cause a negative reaction. I mean, I saw some footage that you and Kian, we call Kian K2, you and K2 and even some others have of Rebel News homemade ads that one fella put on his combine, another one in Tabor that's like a billboard. So this grassroots solidarity with Rebel News, it's really interesting because all we're doing is what any journalist should do. One of our things we say all the time, Sid, follow the facts wherever they lead. That means we tell the story, even if it doesn't meet our preconceptions. We follow the facts wherever they lead. That should be the motto of any journalist. The fact that it's so rare means the Rebel News is treated like some hero. And I think you are doing heroic work, but it shouldn't be rare. Like every journalist, people should say, he tells the truth. Like you should say that about every journalist. And the fact that it's not the case, you guys have been embedded with the truckers. I think it was so symbolic that one of those CBC government journalists actually tweeted boasting about the fact that he was embedded with the cops. He was embedded with the cops hunting the truckers. Gee, why doesn't anyone trust the CBC? Am I right?
No, exactly. And what they're doing is they're taking a shot of the scene, and they're taking that from not miles away, but a very far distance away from where things are actually happening. They in some senses refuse to come close, and in some senses there's a shyness for people here to talk to them because they know that what they're going to say is probably going to get misconstrued. And that's one of the reasons why we've been able to get so close, is because exactly what you're saying. They know we're here to tell the truth, and we're here to tell the other side of the story, what mainstream media won't, and right now what they're not able to.
Well, let me just check one detail there. So you said that the cops who have this perimeter, the cops have, I'm calling it a siege wall, because they're really cutting. I mean, the truckers sometimes do and sometimes don't block the border, but the cops have their own blockade, by the way. So you're saying media is allowed to go through, and I know lawyers are, because the lawyer we crowdfunded for the truckers, Chad Williamson, I just saw him do a video down there. So you're saying the CBC is allowed to come in, but are you saying there are no CBCers at Coutts itself? Is that what you're saying?
Not that I've seen. They come by every once in a while in their van. They'll park, way off in the distance. We can see them, they can see us, but they won't really get too close. And in terms of that police barrier, that's not just the one in Milk River, which most people would be familiar with, but it is literally wrapped around Coutts. The entire area has police barriers set up. And just now, the negotiators were here just checking out the scene and giving a heads up just to see how the day was going to go.
So you mean the police negotiators?
Yes, sorry, that's correct.
So how do they do that? So the RCMP comes in and some big boss hog character says, "Now hear this," or something. So how does that go when the RCMP negotiators, and who knows who they're speaking on behalf of? Because the RCMP is a federal police force whose commissioner was appointed by Trudeau, but it's contracted by the Alberta government to police in the rural parts. So you've got the Calgary Police Service and the Edmonton Police Service, which are local forces. But in the country parts, it's Trudeau's cops hired by Kenny. So I don't even know who would be running that operation. So a Trudeau-Kenny cop shows up, and how does that go? Does he come out, is he come out super friendly, or does he come out growly? Is it the same guy every time? What's that like when a Trudeau-Kenny negotiator comes?
Usually it's the same guys. And they try and, be as respectful as they can. They try and be very polite. Of course, both sides, the blockaders, the truckers here, and the farmers here, and the authorities that come, they both try and remain they keep a civil discourse. They're very polite. They laugh amongst each other, right? They joke. So they do try and keep a positive relationship going. That way there is a good amount of communication. That way both sides kind of have an understanding of the situation. But if I could just add one thing, when they were here right now, there was actually a local who was present while the negotiators were here, and Chad was talking with them as well. And he was very upset that on Saturday, I believe it was, he was trying to leave town to get some medical things that he needed. And on the way back, he was being stopped at the Milk River police barrier that was set up. And they were giving him a tough time. They weren't being rude per se, but they were giving him a tough time getting through. And he had to go and find alternate roads to get in. And this is an older fellow, right? So it's better to have these guys just go straight on their way. And he just wanted to go home. But at times, it seems even the people who live in Coutts are being restricted from entry. And that's not because of the truckers. He was actually very thankful to the truckers, because as soon as the truckers found out that he needed to go out there and get some stuff done, they moved right away. Wow. But the authorities and their barrier that they have set up, well, that was unfortunately a different story. But they are trying to keep that transit going for locals so that they still have access. But it has been tough over the last few days with those police barriers literally wrapped around Coutts.
Very interesting. Well, I've seen some of the footage that you and K2 have published, and I see that the farmers have arrived. Big farm equipment. So that's a different move. And the truckers, I mean, the thing about truckers, they're long haul. They may be from dozens or hundreds, theoretically even thousands of miles away. But those that farm equipment is not meant to go on 1,000-mile journeys. I mean, I suppose it does 1,000 miles over time on a certain farmer's field. But if you're rolling in with some of those tractors, and I don't even know how you would describe some of the equipment, that's coming from maybe 10 miles away, maybe 20 miles away. I'd be shocked if much of it came from more than 50 miles away. So those are local people. That's very interesting to me, because that suggests that this protest is in friendly territory. It's not as the Ottawa politicians say, an occupation of Parliament Hill, it sounds to me like the folks in, I mean, obviously there's going to be a difference of opinion, but it sounds to me like there is a fair bit of organic domestic support for the truckers. Am I wrong?
No, absolutely, you're correct there. And the first time that we saw a big wave of farmers and just other local supporters come in was the moment that RCMP decided to end negotiations. This happened much earlier in this whole situation. And at that point, there was the blockade on the highway with the semi-trucks and whatnot. But as those negotiations were told it was over, these truckers and farmers, they came in and they formed a second barrier, basically going across the highway, not just along. And now we're seeing that second response that we saw last night, where roughly 10 tractors came in to support these guys, and they blocked off the highway for a good amount of time last night. And that was a response to, well, basically Jason Kenney's lack of announcement, as everyone was expecting him to make some kind of announcement yesterday, but that did not come to pass.
Yeah, it sounds like Jason Kenney is really playing some slippery games here, because I know in the very early days, the rural MLAs, and by the way, the local MLA there, I can't find hide nor hair of him. I think he's hiding. Where have you heard anything? I mean, if I was the MLA, that's the provincial politician in charge of, I think it's called Tabor Warner, the riding. It's a fairly large riding because it's a rural riding, so it's fairly sparse. But I mean, that, and I'm from Southern Alberta, not that far south, but I know those places. I've been to Tabor, I've been to Lethbridge, I've been to Cardston. I know those people, Aboriginal folks. I've been to the reserve in Cardston. There's some good people there, and they're not afraid to tell their politicians what's what. Have you detected that MLA, the Jason Kenney MLA, or for that matter, the federal MP, I think his name is Glenn Mott's, going from memory. Have you detected them anywhere?
Not exactly. Certainly not within the action. What it seems like is these guys try and keep themselves on the perimeter of the situation, kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And there's like whispers and murmurs of what they're trying to do and how they're trying to support. But at the end of the day, they mostly remain behind closed doors in their approach. So it's unfortunate, but that seems to be how they play ball.
You know, it's funny. I know you're so busy there in Coutts, Alberta, in the center of the action. But today in Parliament Hill, a Liberal MP, and not just some nobody, I think he was the head of their Quebec caucus or something, pretty important position. He said today, time to end the mandates and time to end the language of division. Just a stunning thing to hear. And I'm not even going to call him a Liberal backbencher, because he had some, I mean, he's immediately going to be fired by Trudeau, of course. But wouldn't it be something if a Quebec Liberal MP showed more guts and more care for freedom than the rural Southern Alberta United Conservative Party MLA from probably the most right-wing place in Canada? Like, seriously.
No.
And the UCP, that's the United Conservative Party, it's Jason Kenney's party, are cowardly mice, and you've got a Liberal MP from Quebec going public. I'm deeply disappointed. And frankly, my view, and I'm not there, is that if these rural MPs don't take care of Jason Kenney, then they're all going to go down together. That's how it looks like to me. Now tell me, what's going on? Because we don't know what's going to happen tonight at 5 p.m. Mountain Time when Kenney makes, I think it's going to be a half announcement, I think.
Yeah, it's probably going to end.
Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. Yeah, it's probably going to end up being something like a half announcement. Hopefully it'll bear fruit, and hopefully these guys will receive the message that they're hoping to receive. But realistically, at a moment's notice, they could shut this border down again if that doesn't happen. And one thing to note is there's some people wondering out there why they don't just keep it shut. Well, realistically, they don't need to, because at a moment's notice, they can shut it down again when they decide to. And that's what we saw with these tractors last night, where they decided to close it down for a bit. Now, in the morning time, when we got back, they had opened it up again, just so some people could flow through. And they made their point, and they're just going to keep holding the line here to see what Jason Kenney says. And that'll set the stage for how these guys move forward in the minutes, hours, and days ahead.
I'm not sure if I mentioned, there's so many things happening, and I'm involved in different conversations, so I can't remember if I just said it. You said, but besides the Ambassador Bridge in Detroit, Windsor, I think it's the ATU. I think that's the Amalgamated Transit Union, if I'm not mistaken. Bus drivers now say they're going to join, at least in resisting the mandates. I'm not sure what that form that will take. I just saw the headline flash by. So I think that first you had the truckers, then you had the farmers, and if I'm reading that headline right, you got the bus drivers, all the working class people. By the way, where are the socialist parties right now who claim to stand with the working man? They're denouncing. Jagmeet Singh couldn't be more vicious in his language towards the working man. He's no working man. I've never seen a guy dressed fancier in my life than him. You mess with the people who make things go. You mess with people who work outside. You mess with people who know how to do stuff, make things, hard hats, uniforms. I mean, the fancy folks who are on their MacBooks at their country cottage loving the lockdown, yeah, I suppose they make things. I mean, you could put us in that category. We're in the news business. What is that really? But a lot of things stop working pretty quick. If you don't get your groceries, you don't get your deliveries, the buses grind to a halt, the borders grind to a halt. It's very interesting to see a true workers' rebellion, true workers. I mean, I grew up very free enterprise oriented, and if I had to answer which side are you on, labor or capital, I wouldn't have said labor. Not that I was against working people. I just would have said, oh, I'm against Marxism. I'm for free enterprise. But to see a true blue-collar workers' rebellion against these lockdown laws that are so punitive, it makes me feel like a bit of a revolutionary. And I'm just so proud that our team has covered it from coast to coast. I really think it's realigned politics. I mean, I was considered, quote, right-wing for my entire life. And I think in many ways I was, and in some ways I still am. But the pride I feel in the working men and women of this country standing up for our basic freedoms that the fancy class has allowed to be eroded for 2 years, that's a great feeling. And it makes me feel better about Canada maybe than I've ever felt in my whole life. I'm just saying.
No, that's exactly it. And between the convoy and the blockades here, it's really sparked something amongst not just the labor class, but especially them, but all Canadians. And we're kind of reminded of what it is to be Canadian. And that is the unifying factor here. It's not about who you voted for. It's not about if you have a vaccine or not. It's about being Canadian and getting those rights back that for generations we've fought so hard to have. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that for the last 2 years, the political class, the upper echelon, they've sort of taken to this divisive rhetoric and been actively trying to divide Canadians over things that should be mundane. But it does seem like with these truckers standing up, everyone's sort of realizing, yeah, we're Canadian, we have rights, and the power's in our hands. And the only reason why this has gone, I think, so stellar is because the power that we have as Canadians is the power to peacefully fight back. Yeah. And that's something that we're seeing more and more by the day.
Well, and it's being peaceful. That's what's amazing. You know what? I don't know my Canadian history as well as I should, but I do know there was something called the General Strike of Winnipeg. And I think, if my memory is right, that was in 1919, more than 100 years ago. There was a general strike. Now, that was fomented by real communists, actual communists inspired by the Russian Revolution. What we have here is a workers' rebellion, almost like a general strike when you think about it. It's not this company or that company. It's entire classes of people. But it's not for communism. In an interesting twist, it's against the sort of communism, or maybe you call it fascism, the unity between big pharma, big tech, big government, locking us all down, taking away our freedoms unlimited for an interminable length of time. It's a general strike for freedom, which may be the first time that's happened. I don't know. I suppose you could call the fall of the Berlin Wall this. This is very exciting to me, Sid. I think you're really in the center of the action. I want to close by talking about our lawyer. As you know, Rebel News, not the Democracy Fund, but Rebel News itself, has crowdfunded Chad Williamson, and he has two colleagues, Marty and Yaron, if I got the name right. So we got 3 lawyers who are helping out. I know Chad's back down there. I think things are about to hit the fan. By the time this goes to air, we'll know what's what. But I think Jason Kenney is going to announce that he has gone to court ex parte, that means in secret, to get an injunction against these truckers. I think he's going to announce that. Now, he doesn't need that. There's enough laws on the books for the police to enforce as it is. But I think he's going to try and smash the truckers while giving in a little bit, because he's got too much pride. So he doesn't want to look like he's dancing to the truckers' tune. So he's going to give him a few tiny things, not much, and at the same time, he's going to smash him with an injunction. That's why Chad Williams is so important. He's going to be there on the ground. I don't want you to give away any legal confidence. It's not that you would even be included in the solicitor-client privilege, but tell me what's the spirit of the men down there. They're chatting with Chad fairly often. They're getting advice from him, aren't they?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And spirits are high, and he's been great talking with everybody. And it's a weird position for him to be in, because he's representing clients, but he's also representing a larger group of people here who are involved in the blockade. So he's just been trying to help out everyone everywhere he can. And I think it has been a really good help for them, especially considering before he got here, there was talks that it looked like enforcement was on its way, so to speak. And Chad got here, and they talked, and they were the negotiators between the enforcement side and the truckers here. So things have remained steady, and we have seen the attempts of enforcement here. But every time it's either Chad or the positioning of the truckers here that kind of pushed them back a little further away, the authorities. So I think Chad has definitely been a really great help here, a really great intermediary, because these guys, the salt of the earth, they're laymen, they're not politicians. They don't know that slick talk that negotiators and lawyers would normally use. Not to say that they wouldn't understand it, but it might not be an immediate awareness for them. So I think it's been great that Chad's been here and he's been able to help with those negotiations.
Well, I like to say about him, he's a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll. He does have a country sensibility to him, so I think he's a perfect fit. He is what they call an officer of the court. When you're a lawyer, you have certain obligations to the courts, not just to your clients. You have a professional, ethical obligations to the profession. So Chad has to be sort of well-behaved. He can never counsel people to do something illegal. So I'm very happy to hear your report that he's really brought out the best of the situation, de-escalated the situation, being a go-between intermediary, I think you said. So that's exactly what we were hoping he would do, to lower the risk temperature there. And I think these truckers might, in the end, they might need some legal help. We have committed to crowdfund Chad's fees to defend any legal ramifications of the truckers. Folks probably know our URL. It's truckerlawyer.ca. So Chad and his two colleagues, I don't know how the story is going to end, but however it ends, we'll be there to help. Sid, thanks for your work on the ground. Appreciate you. I mean, you've been down there. It's going on. It's more than a week now. Am I right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's a couple days from 2 weeks now, but these guys are holding the line strong, and there's no end in sight until there's an end in sight for the mandates.
Yeah. Well, I think you really are a part of history being made. And the thing about history is it's told by the winners, right? I mean, we don't know, we know the story of David and Goliath because David won. And it's important that the story be told honestly, no matter how it goes. I don't know who's going to, quote, win. I think in many ways the truckers have already won. They've given hope to people. They've reminded us we care about freedom. They've shown that you can make the tyrant blink. They've conducted themselves peacefully. They've inspired people, let them know they're not alone. I think the truckers actually have already won. How this final thing washes out, we don't know. But I think, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. If I could just say one thing there. There was a little cardboard kind of note that was made inside, and it said, "It's not the size of the man in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the man." Yeah. And as you mentioned, David versus Goliath, well, they were even talking about that too, and it really does feel like there's a bunch of Davids in there, and there's only one Goliath. Yeah.
Well, we've got to document what happened. So that's why one of the things, I mean, Rebel News fights a lot of fights. And I'll tell you the truth, we probably lose more than we win because we take long shots. And I don't care. I mean, I wish we won them all. But you have to fight them. And sometimes you fight a long shot and you win. And that's on the fighting side. We crowdfund lawyers. But even if, putting aside the fighting, we have to document. We have to tell the truth about what happened. We can't let the liars at the CBC write the story on the Battle of Coutts. And so that's why you and K2 and Adam Sos, and I think Mocha was down there the other day. That's why what you're doing is important. I'm going to let you go, Sid, because you got a lot of things to do. Appreciate you joining the call today. And stay safe, stay warm. Sounds like you're in the middle of the action, having the time of your life.
Absolutely. It sounds great. It's
All
a
right.
nice chat, guys, and I hope for the best on all fronts.
Yeah, me too. There you have it. Sydney Fizzard, one of our great citizen journalists on the scene at the border between Coutts and Sweetgrass, Montana. Stay with us, more ahead. That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.